Hello everyone, I'm Annie Gibbins and you're listening to Memoirs of Successful Women, the podcast where you get to hear candid conversations with fascinating women from around the globe who share aspects of their business and life journey, how they measure their success and what they have learned along the way. Hello and welcome to Memoirs of Successful Women. Today I'm introducing you to Sharmin Smith and we're going to be talking all things women in politics. Sharmin was a presidential candidate in the US 2020 elections and she's also the author of Taming The Tida. So we are going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about all things making a stand for what you believe in and how do you actually go about that in the political sense to actually champion your cause, to make a difference, and then also what are the repercussions of that, because we will automatically you'll be thinking it's not good when you stir the pot, you stir a bee's nest and they will come running buzzing. So welcome to my program, Sharmin.
Thank you very much, Annie. I appreciate you having me on today.
So tell me and the listeners all about, why did you run? Let's just start in 2020. Why did you actually think, this is going to be a good idea? Where did that all come from, that you would be the woman who'd put herself forward in this way?
Well, it actually started with the book in 2014. Mm-hmm. So the book Taming the Tida is a fictional life story about politics, religion, and a reality TV show. And it started based off of a joke. After Obama won the 2012 election, I was anxiously looking forward to 16 because I didn't think anybody could beat Hillary. I thought 16 was a slam dunk, a home run for sure. Hillary was just going to step out onto the field and Republicans' their bench was shallow and they had nothing to throw up against her. And so it started as a joke. The only way the Republicans would win would be able to start a reality TV show and find a candidate of the people to be able to actually beat her. And so I spent some time writing this book, and for a while, I forced myself to sit down and write for an hour a day for months. And then something hit me and took over, and it was like a channeled message. And I just bled 300 pages in 2 weeks. And the bulk of the book was written in a 2-week period. And when I snapped out of it, Michael Brown had been shot in St. Louis and everything was on fire, and Robin Williams had just committed suicide. And I bundled the book up and I shipped it off to a publisher because I didn't know if anybody would be interested in it. And I got an offer within 48 hours. But they wanted a full year to publish the book, and I wanted the book done quicker than that. So I self-published it. And I self-published in January of 2015. And I started marketing my book, and I thought maybe it would have this big viral moment and be a platform that I could use to launch my dreams and ambitions. And I landed on Newsmax in May of 2015. And a month later, Trump announced his campaign, and he switched teams and just ran his mouth like crazy and did a bunch of stuff that I said to do. And a bunch of things in the book really played out almost as though I had written them. And it was like watching somebody hijack my dream. And it was like watching my dream turn into a nightmare. So I launched a write-in campaign for president in 2016, and it obviously went nowhere, but I had to file paperwork and I got myself on a list. And once you get noticed for certain activities, it is hard to get rid of people once they are paying attention to you.
Yeah.
My participation in politics has come with a very hefty price, and I have paid it, but I keep coming back for more. Add that to the list of things that's wrong with me.
I don't think there's anything wrong with you. I think you're absolutely gorgeous and you should just stand and represent so much. There's so much to just unpack straight away in that. So first of all, do you think Trumpy actually read your book and got some ideas off you?
I don't think he read it. I think he had somebody read it for him. And yes, I do think he got some ideas from me. I
Yeah.
don't think he has the ability to come up with an original idea on his own. And I think we've seen so many stories over the last couple of years where he has obviously pulled themes out of movies to try to create a narrative. And I do think that he found me. And so 2015 and 16 was complicated. 17 was a mess for me. And by 18, like I didn't care. It was my dream and I was going to take it back no matter what it took. And I knew there was an uphill battle and the odds weren't in my favor, but I didn't care. I was going to do it anyways. And
I absolutely love that. I love that. And it's kind of like, and hello, it's my ideas. It's my baby. It's my thoughts. It's actually, you're stealing the essence of who I am and what I represent and what I think. So even though someone takes that and then has a lot of money, a lot of power behind it, I love that moment that you just went, no way. This is actually me. This is what I represent. This is my message.
January 2016, when Bill O'Reilly announced that he was doing a nationwide talk show called Who Wants to Be President? And that was the name of the reality show in my book. It really felt like there was more than one celebrity making money off of my ideas. And I was really upset about it. So when I
influential woman.
Yeah. When I launched this campaign in 2016 or in 2018, I hired a marketing team and their whole goal was to teach people how to give interviews, how to get on podcasts, radio and TV, and how to monetize their content. And I just thought, thank you, Lord. This is exactly what I need. Yes. And so I hired them and I paid them and they started pitching me to people. And it was great because I had all these contacts coming in and all these offers for help. And then they pitched me to Tana Gortz, who is one of Trump's senior campaign managers, senior campaign advisors. And my life got really messy after that. I took such a unique approach with the pitch that I took. My number one campaign issue is the death penalty for pedophiles. And I really just put my heart out on the line. I came with a bunch of good ideas and I caught a lot of attention. And there was funny times where, in the beginning it was funny. In 2018, when no one knew what QAnon was or what was going to happen, it was funny to me that Trump would be watching me and I was doing things that would upset him. And it was like December 2018. It was all over the news for like 3 days. He was mad for some reason. Nobody knew why. He was screaming in the Oval Office and breaking things and nobody knew why. And I absolutely knew why.
That's me.
It was me. I had a new hashtag. Trump's gonna get beat by a girl.
Exactly. There's nothing more painful for Donald Trump to get beaten by a girl with a passion. So let's just tell the listeners, what does Tida mean? Why did you call it Taming the Tida? Tell us that, because that'll make sense to who you are.
Okay, yes. So Taming the Tida. Tida is a Hawaiian word for an aggressive female personality who will fight you. And that personality exists in every woman I have ever met throughout my life. It does not matter where she lives, where she's from, what her race is, what her religion is, what her nationality is. Every woman I have ever met acts the same way. And I want women to unleash their titas, let them loose. It's time to get angry. It's time to speak up and it's time to speak out. We already know what they're going to say to us. We've heard all the complaints about how we're man haters and how angry we are. It doesn't matter how nice and polite we are. Let's stop being nice and polite and let's be willing to speak up and fight back. And one of the things that I really realized through this process is that my perspective, my aggression, my attitude, my personality, all of that makes me uniquely already trained to be able to handle arguing with somebody like Donald Trump. The idea that I even got as far as I did, the reality is there is pretty privilege at play in there. If I hadn't have been pretty, he wouldn't have been willing to listen to me. I know my enemy and I know how to get under his skin. And for a while, it was a lot of fun.
Mm.
It was entertaining to me to give a podcast one day and then hear him talk about it that night on the news.
Yeah.
Only he would try to sound smart and then end up sounding stupid, and it would just make me laugh more because it was easy to make him make a fool out of himself because he, his ego is so overinflated. It's easy to get him to do stuff.
Oh my goodness, he's very
It was
predictable.
it
Yes.
was fun for a while, but at some
Mm.
point in time in 2020, it became very dangerous and
Yeah.
it was no longer fun anymore. And it was obvious when people were coming to my house and things were getting broken, and there was a lot of really dangerous things taking place. At some point in time, it no longer became fun. There was a lot of personal consequences to me in 2019. I believe the woman that I hired as my campaign manager was actually opposition research sent to me to
Wow.
get to know me and create drama on me, because I had lived my whole life wanting to get into politics. So I lived a very careful life. There wasn't really any scandals following me. Sure, I've done some things wrong. I've made some mistakes. I've got some stories to tell. I'm looking forward to telling them, like, whatever, I got some stories.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not perfect. And that's one of the things that makes me really unique. But I don't have any scandals. I don't have any drama.
Mm.
And when she showed up, suddenly I had scandals and drama everywhere. And it just kept multiplying. And I couldn't get rid of her. You know, she shut down my website. She made donations to my campaign. She charged them back. She stole a check out of my campaign account and fraudulently signed. I mean, it was a nightmare of epic proportions. It impacted my divorce settlement. It impacted my relationship and my visitation with my children. It impacted my ability to even see my children. And the quickest way to shut a woman up is to take away her kids. And it worked really well on me. We all know what we say about the women that don't get custody of their kids. And the visitation I get is wonderful, but it's not enough for me. It doesn't make me happy. As a matter of fact, I'm really very angry at this woman who does not have children and does not care about the consequences that she impacted on me and my life. Had she not damaged my relationship with my children, I don't know if I'd have remained as angry as I have for so long. But there really is no wrath like the pain that comes from damaging a mother's relationship with her children. And I dislike this woman and everything she put me through. Now, it is hard for me to put into perspective that she was hired to destroy my life and she is probably a decent person. But the reality is that she destroyed my life and I can't stand her. And as I watched a lot of the stuff that unfolded in 2020, I really began to realize how well connected she was and how powerful her ability was to move media mountains.
Mm.
She I was involved in major news stories. Nobody knew who I was. And but it directly impacted my life. There's a lot of stories that took place in 2020 that surround just the chaos that was specifically designed to divide people and destroy people. And it upset me because I could see that it was being done deliberately. And it felt like to me, they were trying to draw me out as a third party candidate so I could split the vote. And it was something that she and I had discussed at the beginning of my campaign. She said, well, what happens if you don't get the Democratic nomination? What will you do? And I said, I've already run a write-in campaign. I'll just run another one. So I was a perfect candidate because that's what they were looking for. They wanted someone to split the vote. And because I knew I had already told her that was a possibility, because I knew that's what they wanted. When I walked into huge setups where that's clearly what they wanted from me was to just step forward and media would have exploded around me, I refused to do it because I just wanted to tick them off. Kenosha Kenosha is my home. And Kenosha is one of the times when it became obvious that this was really dangerous to me. Trump had been talking about coming to Jacksonville for the RNC. And I really wanted Trump and the RNC in Jacksonville because I live in Jacksonville and I know how Jacksonville is. I had this wonderful plan for what I was going to do at the RNC. And I made the mistake of calling the DNC and letting them know. And within 24 hours, the RNC was no longer coming to Jacksonville. And so one of the things my campaign manager expressed to me was big moves are made silently. And that was one of those times that I spoke up and shared my plans and it backfired on me. So as you're moving forward and whatever it is you do, keep in mind, you don't know who's listening. You don't know where they have moles. And if you have big plans to do something, you need to keep them private because otherwise somebody will do something to change it so you can't. You don't really know it, and it was really eye-opening for me to see how quickly they would move and make changes. So when Kenosha popped up, I received an email from my marketing team, the people I had hired, as soon as it popped up that they were going to call for Kenosha to be ground zero to the Second Civil War. And I took that really personally because that's my home. My nieces and nephews live there. My mother and my sister both died in hospice there with the same hospice nurse. Kenosha is very powerful and personal for me. And as I showed up there, you know, Trump was talking about powerful Democrats running the streets of Kenosha, advising people. I was in Kenosha. Kenosha's my home. I feel very connected there. And I was running the streets of Kenosha advising people, I promise you, I'm not the boogeyman. And what I saw in those streets, in the protests, were people still willing to have a conversation. People still wanted to talk to the other side. And as much as they wanted us to fight and start shooting each other, that's not what we wanted. And I still feel like that's really powerful today because as we're on this precipice of war and we're still so divided here in the United States, we don't really want war. Especially, we have enough military veterans in this country who know what war is like. We don't want war on our soil. We don't want war anywhere. We're really at a time in the world where we're smart enough to no longer want to fight these battles. And we have to be brave enough to step up and call out bad behavior and share the truth. And that's one of the reasons why I keep going on podcasts and moving forward and telling my stories, because I want my truth to be told, because I think it will help us heal. When I wrote this book, especially those 2 weeks where I was just bleeding pages, it it so absorbed my heart and soul. I just knew I was writing this book with the purpose of uniting and healing my nation and bringing us together. And I really feel like now more than ever, that is where my value lies, because that election is over. Yes, there will be another election, and I don't know what will happen. There's always another election. That's the best part about politics.
Yeah.
But right now, what is most prominent on my heart is just trying to figure out how we get back the other side that was deliberately lied to just to tear us apart. You know, what the Republicans and the right wing believed when they believed all those QAnon stories. And I don't know what's going on with sex trafficking rings or Wayfair, or I don't for 1 second believe 90% of the stuff that I heard, because I know who the people were making up the stories. And the story my campaign manager told me broke my heart, and I absolutely believed her, and believing her cost me everything. And I think that that's a really important lesson for Republicans who have believed what they've heard from Trump. It will cost you everything. He's not going to step up to help you. All these people who are in jail right now, in prison because of the January 6th insurrection, because they believed him and they were willing to storm the Capitol and kill politicians. He's not going to help anybody. And he's calling for people to lay down their lives to defend and protect him. And he wouldn't do that for anybody else. He will turn his back on his kids and let his kids go to prison before he suffers any consequences for his behavior. And it's a really hard time, because it is clearly obvious to most people that Trump and Putin are in bed together, and they're working together because they want to take over the world for their own evil, greedy, maniacal purposes. They don't care about poor people. They don't care about sick people. They don't care about anybody but themselves. And they're proving that they're willing to hurt and destroy anyone just to get ahead. And there has to be a way other than just sanctions to do it. There has to be a way to get through to people's hearts and minds. There was once a time we trusted and loved each other much more than what we do now. And it is really my hope and my belief that sharing my story and being just open and honest about all of my mistakes and whatever I was feel like I was part of. It's my hope that doing that will give people hope and cause them to stop focusing on his lies, because it's so obvious to so many people that that's what's taking place. But it's hard it's hard to get people to understand. It's so much easier to con someone than it is to convince them they've been conned. And I'm just a nobody. I'm just I've got the right DNA. One of the things that I've learned through the years is that there really is a genetic connection to the presidency. It has been documented and tracked, and I researched it for my book, and I got my DNA test, but it wasn't until actually May of 2018 that I knew how strong it was in me. I had gotten a link from Wikipedia. They have a family tree, WikiTree, and you can upload your DNA sample to WikiTree. And it populated a bunch of pre-existing groups for me that were already there based on my DNA that they wanted me to participate in. And I didn't know it because I only researched one branch of my family tree for my book. I was looking for something specific. I knew I was related to a president, so I just followed that path. But I ended up with presidents falling off of 2 branches in my tree. So I went through life believing I was related to this one president. And then in 2018, I got another half a dozen dumped in my lap. And I discovered a curse. And
That's right. Once you go investigating, you never know what's going to come back to you, positive and negative.
you don't know what you're going to find. It's true. But the desire to run doesn't bubble up in everyone. It is a rare thing. And, every year we have between 2,000 and 2,500 people in the United States who file the paperwork to run for president. And they range from Joe Biden to D's nuts. And I'm closer to Joe Biden, but D's nuts gets better press. It's just America,
So
people
the DNA, I know anything's possible in America.
What did they say?
You've got this DNA, you've got this natural desire. You're political in nature, right? It totally suits you. It drives you. You've also had an incredible learning curve of, oh my gosh, in essence, and I can hear as you speak, you are a sweetie, you're a passionate sweetie, right? So you're like, I've got a heart, I want to change things. And I know in your backstory, you've got a strong desire to be looking, against pedophiles, incarceration, gun control, other sort of issues that are very serious in nature. And so you're a passionate woman who is driven to make a difference in this world, to make it a better place, make it a more loving place. At the same time, when you head into this journey, you've realized the reality. And then some of your other language is, you've actually got to, be aggressive and almost, play that ballsy game, if we're frank, right? And so it's such a tricky, challenging combination. And then there's trust. And then you go, well, here's someone who should be helping me, who actually is white-anting, not just a campaign, but I'm hearing your whole life. Like, this is serious damage, right? This is
Right.
So other women will be listening and going, wow, okay, well, how do I do this? I'm a woman who, wants to, make a difference. And then you hear a conversation like this and go, okay, well, I'm passionate, I've got drive, I'm tenacious, I'm happy to play the game, but I'm ethical. But you're also coming against, then you've got to then go, but who do I not trust, as in your campaign manager? Who do I not share my amazing plans with because I now don't trust people? It's a really hard package. I'd love you to share, what's your reality at the moment on how you're reinventing your narrative to yourself and your being, because the next election, it will be around the corner, and you're a woman who's going to be here for the long haul, right? So
right.
How will that affect you moving forward to actually give confidence to people that there is hope in the system, hope in the challenge? It's not just all pre-done.
Well, and that is a challenge, right? Because one of the mistakes that I made through the process is that I wasn't working within the party, right? The Democratic Party, the Republican Party, they're very solidly established throughout the United States. And I am a Democrat, but I'm not part of the party.
Yeah.
you know? So I was just out there trying to hire people and do good work and not really be part of the party, but I'm not making that mistake again. And I've reached out to the party and I've let them know who I am and I've let them know what my plans are. And I'm building a different type of team around me. And as disappointed as I am in the woman that I hired, it was a great lesson for me, you know,
Mm.
because there were red flags
Mm.
and I ignored them because her connections were so good,
Mm.
right? Her professional experience was so next level that I wanted to be involved with her. So even though there were things that made me go, I still kept her around and I regretted it. And there quickly became a time where I was like, how do I get rid of her? Like,
Mm.
what am I going to do? How do I get rid of this person? And so my advice to you is as soon as you start to get your spidey senses
Mm.
tickling up that there is a problem, don't ever second guess your gut. Don't ever try to talk yourself into trusting somebody. Just get rid of them and
Mm.
suffer whatever the consequences are earlier rather than later. Keeping her in my life longer because I wanted documentation from her. I wanted proof from her. She'd made all these accusations and I have to have proof. I'm a proof girl.
Yeah.
I'm a former fraud investigator and government underwriter. I like my documents. And keeping her around longer allowed her more opportunities to give me trouble. And in the long run, you know, hindsight's always 20/20.
Mm.
I'd have been better off if I'd have just cut her off the first time I got a weird spidey feeling.
Yeah. And I think that is a key message that we all need to learn. And many of us have learned that the painful way because we are too trusting, too lovely, or it just feels too good to be true. And I'm so desperate for it to be true. So your mind is like, oh my gosh, like, how am I so blessed in this situation? And there's so many advantages and shiny little things everywhere that you go, oh, I want more of it, I want more of it because it's so great. But then that's it. When your gut reacts or when the red flags, your radar goes up. I think once you've experienced those sorts of moments, shall we call it, or phases or times or sometimes years of aftermath, it's easier to go, you know what, it's never worth it. It's never worth it. And what I will see that you will come back is a more empowered woman, a woman who actually goes and says, well, this is actually what I need. This is what my, campaign needs. This is what I represent. These are my morals, my values, my ethics. And actually, if something meets that, then that's great. But if it doesn't, and there's a red flag, it then has to go, which is really hard, right? It's so hard.
It is so hard. And I even think back on to the beginning when I first connected with her, you know, I was so excited to have her on my team. Her professional references, as soon as I saw, you know, the connections that she had, I was hooked and I wanted her behind me. I wanted her support and she trauma bonded with me right away. That's something else, especially as women who have sexual assault traumas in their background. You know, you think you have your triggers under control, but she trauma bonded with me. She told me a story of being kidnapped as a child for 4 days and held by multiple men, and she knew where some of them were to this day. And she, you know, I immediately felt so connected to her and so emotional for her story. And she was so happy to have found a political candidate who was open about their sexual assault history and who was open about harsher penalties for sexual predators, because it's not just the death penalty for pedophiles, it's violent rapists and violent murderers, right? We don't even have an accurate definition of what rape is in this country. You know, in the United States, we have 50 different states, and each state has their own right to make their own definition. And some states don't allow you to revoke consent. You know, we need some standard sets of guidelines and expectations that everybody is expected to follow. And we don't have that. You know, I know in Australia that the women are complaining there because some of the men's behavior is so out of control in Australia, but we have a real problem here in America. And the men have been hearing women complain about bad behavior their whole life, and they still don't have a clue how they're supposed to act.
Mm. Mm. I think
it's so frustrating.
it is frustrating, but it's actually getting a unified, a social view on and policy on what the standard is, and that there's repercussions when those standards are not met. The law's the law. So it is about saying no. It's not okay to be angry or frustrated or disappointed. It actually requires people to go, that's not okay. It's unacceptable. And for it to be acceptable, we need to call it out, and we need to be able to work collaboratively with people who can actually enforce change, which is what politics is all about, right?
Yeah. Right, it is, because somebody has to write the laws, and somebody has to determine, and you have to fight with 500 other people about what laws are going to get written.
And most of these laws are written by men, and this is being anti-male. It's actually saying, is it a 50-50 view? 50% of the world are female. So where is that? Where's that influence? Where is that thinking and opinion represented on the words that matter, right?
That is correct. And as women, when we're suffering from laws that are written by men that don't understand our perspective, if we don't step up and run for office, if we don't take an active participation in creating those policies and those laws, we're the ones that are suffering. And I'm tired of suffering. I'm ready to fight, right? And I want the other women who are tired of suffering too, I want them to get ready to fight. And I want them to know that they don't have to be a perfect candidate. They don't have to have the best background. They don't have to have all the right connections. A lot of campaigns are won on shoestring budgets because sweat equity is more valuable when you're knocking on doors than it is any other time. A lot of times people in politics get so wrapped around who they're going to get their big donations from. They completely forget about building up a team of people who will walk around neighborhoods and hang door knockers and talk to people on your behalf. That is,
it's the Obama way. Obama did that, right? So prove that theory. It wasn't just money pays for great campaigns. It actually is saying, well, if you don't have money, you raise up an army who will work on your behalf. They are your marketing team, and they are passionate. And when you hear people who've got true passion, they really believe it. It's just not a word. I'm not just paid for it. It's not just glossy. It actually is real people. It's real stories. It's real hope that then results in change. If we actually get this through, then it will impact my life, my neighborhood's life, my community, our whole state, and hopefully the country. And so, I love that. I'm all into people power, which is why I've got my own tribe. And I know you've got many of yours as well, because it makes a difference being collaborative. And that's a tricky issue there too, because you're wanting to go collaborate over compete, and you're wanting to be open and trusting, but then you also have to be very savvy and very guarded about, who is in your best interest and who isn't, and who is, basically on your team, and so I think that you've demonstrated the sum of the power of I talk about the 5 closest people to you, but when you have someone who is deeply connected to you at your root cause, of your heart and the things that you campaign against, and they get into that, is incredible, the influence they have and how hard it is to extract that, right? Because there's always, and the longer you leave it, the more painful it is, right? So you've got more pain and you've got more damage, right? So no wonder you are a wreck at the end of it. How did all of this affect your mental health? Like, seriously.
Well, one of the things that I'm really grateful for is that I'm an active advocate for mental health care. And because I am a survivor, I have been in and out of mental health treatment for therapy for almost 2 decades. I got my first PTSD diagnosis in 2008. And so as painful as all this was, I'm fortunate that I'm capable of accepting the personal responsibility of driving myself to a therapist and getting an updated diagnosis and seeing a counselor every week. And it has been a challenge. And I've really struggled, especially with suicidal ideation, because there was definitely a time for me when it was very dark and I couldn't be around my kids. And she was threatening this sex tape. She even called the police and had them come to my house for a mental health check. And when the police got there, I told them about the sex tape. I told them about the stolen money. I told them about everything. And she was arrested the next day. There was, I thought there was going to be real consequences to her.
Yeah.
And she was on a podcast that I was on, that I'm on every week, last October. So before she came on the podcast, I went to the police station that came to my house so I could get a copy of that police report. And I asked for a copy of the police report when she was arrested the next day, and they'd all been deleted from the system. And the cops were very nervous because they didn't know where the police reports were, and they wanted to know why I wanted the police reports. And the only thing they could give me was the human resources pay detail, because anytime a police officer is called out to your house, there is a report that's submitted to HR for the pay scale to be able to track their payment and their activities. And the only thing they were able to provide me was this HR document to prove that they had been called out. But the police reports were magically disappeared, and her arrest record is gone. And had I not taken screenshots of all those things when they happened, I wouldn't have any proof. But I was a fraud investigator and a mortgage underwriter. So you can be sure I have a lot of documentation in a lot of different places, because should something happen to me, somebody else needs to know where to find it.
I can imagine that little treasure trove file. You want to keep
so many treasure troves. My poor attorney.
Exactly.
We send prayers to my attorney and my therapist.
If you don't mind sharing, who is this little girl you're fighting for? So who is this girl that you are? Who is, your earlier life? What did you have to experience that, drove you to go, yes, you've got your DNA and you might have got into politics, but what made you so passionate about fighting the injustices that didn't just affect you, but they affect, young girls around the world?
Well, I'm an unwanted child. My mother tried to abort me many times. I have a spectacular birth story because she tried to get rid of me so often. She told me throughout my life growing up that she always knew there was something wrong with me because she couldn't get rid of me. I know what it is like to be raised by a mother that doesn't want you and a father that wants you for all the wrong reasons. I'm an adult survivor of childhood sexual abuse. My father was active duty Navy. He retired out of Great Lakes pushing recruits through boot camp, so I was raised in boot camp. I come from a very hard household, and I lived a very tough life, and I have just been a tough person. But when I was probably four years old, just before my dad retired out of the Navy, he had started this business, and he owned a meat packing plant, and he processed whole animals and cut them up and sold them in his butcher shop. And this was going to be his business after he retired from the Navy. And he brought me to work with him. I would run around the freezer with hanging beef and deer all over the place. And there was a lady who came in one day, and she was a regular. She was in all the time. I was there. She convinced him to let me come home with her for the day. And I said some things to her that triggered her spidey senses. So she knew that I was being abused. And when she took me back to his shop that day, she confronted him. Ooh. And she saved my life. Wow. I watched her get in his face and yell at him and tell him she knew what was up and she was going to get him. And he hit everybody. I saw him hit police officers, but he didn't hit her. Whatever it was about this little angry Black woman in the late 70s, early 80s that scared the daylights out of my father, she saved my life. And this strong, angry, tough woman who will fight you has been my inspiration for as long as I can live, as long as I can remember. my campaign manager was a Black woman, and it does not matter what she did to me. It doesn't change my opinion of all Black women, because I was so fortunate to have this amazing experience that I just see that strong, independent, angry Black woman moniker as the goal. I see the as
I
the
want to be
goal.
that.
I see I see the women that make men shake in their boots as the goal. I
Yeah.
see them as the desire and the epiphany and the best part of all of us. You know, one of the things my dad used to say to me when I was a little girl is that I was angry when I was mad. I was purty when I was mad. And I suspect by now I am gorgeous because I'm angry all the time. Whatever it takes.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. And it seriously shows me, it shows the heart and soul of Tida, right?
Right.
That you are that, angry woman who actually just wants things to be right, right with the world in for all the right reasons. And you need to be angry to get that energy, to get that objection, to get that, that no, this is not okay, this is not right on any level to make a difference, because it's palpable, right? And I love it that woman, I had goosebumps just as you were sharing that, because I just absolutely love that woman who is actually empowered. I've got a phrase in my throat, empowered women empower women, and that's exactly what it is. That woman was empowered to actually make a stand, which could have been, how do you know, for her, even life-threatening sometimes, when you make that stand and call it out, actually you don't know what the repercussions are, but for her, she's like, I'm an advocate, I'm a woman, I'm empowered, and I'm not going to take any shit, right? And I'm not going to let that continue for this poor girl, because you represent women globally, girls globally who are in this circumstance. And if you don't have that kind of tenacity, that wildfire, then things won't change. So those people who go and say, well, I don't want women to be angry, well, that's right, we shouldn't have to be angry. We don't want to be as angry as we are. But if there is an injustice, if there is something that needs changing, well, we will fire up, and we should fire up. And not only that, we will unite and get a wildfire storm happening around us to actually make you take notice, to say to in fact change the world. So I absolutely love that, and I think you totally represent that girl who, for someone that inspired you, you are that woman now that is inspiring so many others around the world. Wow.
Thank you. Okay.
We could seriously chat all day. This has just been such an amazing conversation. So let's just finish up with, this, where to from now? What's your next step? What are your main causes? How are people going to find you? How can they support you in the next journey for Sharmin Smith?
Well, you can find me on most social media platforms under Sharmin Smith or Taming the Tida. I'm working on a book right now. I actually just got the cover art for it today, and it's called Ms. Please, Lessons Learned of a Campaign Trail from a Female Presidential Hopeful. And I intend to put together just a bunch of tips and advice to share with other women who are interested in politics, and send out some thank yous and some gratitude into the universe for women who helped me and inspired me along the way. And then I'm also working on, so there'll be pre-orders, pre-sales available for this book on Amazon shortly. But I'm also working on a more detailed story of the events from the summer of 2020, because as I talk about it, I realize how valuable that information will be to help people kind of deprogram and dissect the events where they were conned. And that book is being called A Midsummer's Nightmare. So you can also find me. I've just started a YouTube channel, and it's called Sharmin's Web of Truth and Lies. And I'm going to be putting together, a collection of all of my podcasts and some stalking videos from a gang of goons that like to make my life miserable. And I like to expose them because it makes them run like roaches into a corner.
Yeah, call it out. Call it out. Name and shame.
Well, they thought it was okay to make threats of sexual assault to me and post my address and tell people how to find me so that they could hurt me. And one good turn deserves another.
Wow.
You want to threaten me, then I'm just going to put up the videos of the threats so everyone can see it and they can decide what you are for themselves.
Yeah.
And it's really disappointing, but
But it is.
It is what it is.
Exactly.
When you get into politics, you need to know that the other side is going to come after you, and they're going to make up false accusations. They're going to spread lies, and they're going to say horrible things about you. As long as you know what the truth is and you know their lies, you just keep moving forward. That's my game plan. I've been accused of plagiarizing my book, and I just want to know who it is I ripped off, because that chick is awesome and I want her to be my drinking buddy. Right.
Proven that you're actually the opposite. You're the clairvoyant. You're the one who knew, you predicted the political TV show. You're already ahead of the time in all of your earlier premonitions and the things that you were doing. So that is so hilarious. I think your next book should be Teflon coated, like just like, it's like, yeah, I am so assured and I'm so empowered. It's like, sure, do it. And then I'll just show everyone, yep, no worries. Because when you confront the bully, they lose the power. You actually don't hide from it. You don't get wounded by it. You're Teflon coated, right? You just go and say, obviously you've got to work really hard to get to that level. But when it doesn't hurt anymore, when you actually know it's not a truth, it doesn't affect me. I feel sorry for you. I feel sad for you if that is how you have to live your life. So it is what it is. And then I move on because I'm too busy, doing what matters. And that's what I see in you, Sharmin. And I just know everyone is going to love reaching out with you, reading your book, Taming the Tida, going to your website, which all Sharmin's details will be on my platform. Follow this lady because she is one tenacious, awesome woman who is on a mission and to enforce change. And it is hard to do it by yourself. You need people sort of behind you, cheering you on. And that's definitely what I am doing. And I know women around the world are saying, thank you, Sharmin, for standing up and to be making a difference. And appreciating with incredible gratitude, because we know the cost. We know the cost that it brings when people rattle the cages and upset some people, right? So, although you do have the most gorgeous smile, by the way, it's about saying, beneath that, it's like, yeah, I will keep smiling and I will keep powering, but we appreciate the load that you are carrying on behalf of so many. So thanks for being on my program today.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Memoirs of Successful Women. You can find me at anniegibbins.com, where you can download my free resources, get connected on social, and check out my online magic transformation program. If you love this show, feel free to subscribe to future episodes and, of course, share it with your friends. I'll see you again soon, and until then, happy podcasting.